Charles Chapman. And George Mackay. And he's such an extraordinary director. This actually is the first screenplay he's also written too, and he did a great job with this with his co-writer. An Academy Award-winning director of so many great movies. Please welcome Sam Mendes. Well, this movie, when I've seen it more than once now. I actually saw it for the second time here. I just said they were having a little event, and I said, I want to stay and watch this again. This is a movie you can see so many different things when you see it multiple times. And I'm suggesting that you keep coming back. Sam, how did this idea come about? Because this is the first time you've actually worked as a screenwriter on one of your films, too.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to make the journey between my head and the audience as short as possible. I know that sounds kind of banal in a way, but sometimes as a director, it feels like you're having to explain yourself the whole time to writers, and because the nature of this movie is in many ways non-verbal. There's not a huge amount of dialogue, a lot of it is image, and because I wanted to write something I knew was 2 hours of real time, and ultimately, very quickly after that, I decided it would be one shot. So I felt like I was capable of writing this. Perhaps a more complex screenplay, layered, subplots, that sort of thing, I would have felt a little bit more hesitant. But I just felt like I had it in me to put this down. And it was also partly that it was based on, as you saw from the dedication at the end, it's based on stories my grandfather, Alfred Mendes, told us. And he fought in the war from 1916 to 1918. He enlisted as a 17-year-old, and he told nobody of what happened to him until he was in his 70s, and it was his grandchildren that he told. So for me, it was very personal, and I felt that somehow I owed it to him to try and retell the stories in my way, even though it's not really about him. He told one story about carrying a message across no man's land that was the starting point for the movie. But then the story we created was entirely different. So George is not playing my grandfather, but the movie would not have happened without my grandfather. It was because of him that I wrote it, and because of the stories that he told us.
This is yeah. Well, it's a great tribute to him, whether it's his exact story or not. It's a story of many, I think, here. And I was at an event here. Steven Spielberg's involved in this film, DreamWorks, who I think he said their very first Oscar was American Beauty, his company, and that you directed. And he was talking about this film and really relating to it, but he said it was brought to him by you, and he said, yeah, I read the script and everything, and then you said something to him, and said, oh, by the way, I want to do it in one shot. And he goes, what? It's like a epic. This is not Birdman. This is... Was that what happened?
Yeah, pretty much. The thing is, I felt like I wanted to trap the audience with the characters. And I know that sounds, again, quite simplistic, but you begin to, once you begin to intuit, even if you're not consciously thinking this is one shot, you begin to feel that you're not going to cut. You begin to experience time as the characters are experiencing time. You begin to experience distance in the way that they do, physical difficulty in the way that they do. And for me, with these boys, I was encouraging them to live it as much as to act it. And so it seemed like a natural way to do it if we could. But then, of course, you've got to get a master cinematographer, and Roger Deakins, to my mind, is one of the one or two greatest living cinematographers.
Who you've worked with a few times.
And I had worked with him, and I felt like, although Roger stylistically is not given to using a lot of moving camera shots, so I knew it would be quite a challenge for him. He thinks in quite static images sometimes. He likes storyboarding. But I felt like I don't know. I felt from the very beginning that was how we should tell the story. And once I'd explained it, I mean, I think as a director you have to answer the question why a lot. You know, in many ways it's your biggest job. Well, why do you want me to play this part? Well, here's why. Why do you want me to write the script? Why are we setting it in the casino? Why are we going to this country? Why are we doing it here? And you know, there was a big why that I had to answer straight off here. So Spielberg said, well, why one shot? And I gave him a version of what I've just given you, maybe a little longer and a little more complex, but that was it. And you know, a lot of directing is explaining what you need and why it has to be that way. You know, being a director, there's nothing, I don't have a certificate, right, that says I am a director. These gentlemen have trained, you know, they've been to drama school, and I did no training, you know, I just called myself a director and then had to persuade everyone else that that's in fact the case.
And made a movie and won an Oscar on your first time out.
Yeah, but that was after 15 years of working in the theatre, so it's slightly different, you know, but anyway, so for me it was just another, you know, when someone like Stephen says why, and you convince him, then if you think, well, I can convince Spielberg, I can convince anyone.
You know what interests me, what you just said? But I was a theater director for 15 years. And this movie definitely needs a theater director for a lot of what you're doing. Those sustained shots and everything else. A lot of it is theater.
Well, it's theatre in the sense that, you know, I'm very used to putting together a 2-hour story with no edits, which has an internal rhythm, you know, has a shape to it, momentum, ebbs and flows, breathes in and breathes out, and without recourse to editing. So for me, to tell a story to an audience for 2 hours without cutting that's very normal. On the other hand, this is completely unlike theatre in many ways. In all the other ways, it's very cinematic. It's constantly in motion. You're dealing with the natural world. The relationship between the camera and the actors, the characters, is constantly changing, unlike in a theatre. You know, we were looking for a style, this dance of the camera and the characters that was sometimes able to be very intimate, other times very epic. Was able to establish geography, basically trying to use all the established parts of film grammar. You know, you cut wide for geography, you cut tight for emotion, you know, but without editing. And I think that's what we spent most time doing. And one of the wonderful things was, you know, was having 2 young actors who were committed, so 100% passionate and committed to it for months before we even started shooting. I said to them before we started, you know, it's less of a job, it's more of a lifestyle choice, this, right? You're going to be spending 6 months living this before we even roll camera on it. And they did it. You know, they lived it. They went to France and Belgium to do their research. They spent their lives in these uniforms with their weapons. Because we had to start with them walking on empty fields. And only when we measured the exact number of steps they took and the exact route they would take could we start to build the sets. So we started with them with scripts and just walking with them, and we planted flags in the ground, and then we started digging the trenches, and we dug over a mile of trenches and filming with people. And then
Dennis Gassner's production design is extraordinary. And people don't realize that is production design. That whole thing you're looking at in the fields and all of that.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you know, you've got no man's land, and you've got you know, a natural world that's actually designed. So you've got, you know, woods and orchards and farmhouses. They weren't there. There was just empty fields. So, and I'm saying, you know, we planted wood. I mean, you know, those are all strategically placed depending on what was necessary for each particular scene. And you know, something as simple as an orchard. You know, the boys have a conversation in the orchard. It has to be exactly the length of the scene. It can't be any longer. It can't be any shorter. If it's any shorter, they have to go so slowly it seems unrealistic. In terms of walking, if it's any longer, they have 100 yards still to go before the end, you know, and the dialogue was run out. But that, for me, that started, I worked that out when we did Skyfall. If any of the people in here saw that, Javier Bardem's first speech is one shot, and we constructed the set on stage at Pinebrook to be the exact length of the speech. So it started with me actually walking up and down in an empty studio and working out how at the speed at which I thought he would be moving, and then building the set for the speech. And that set me thinking, well, if I can do that, maybe we can build an entire journey for a script. So everything came from these guys. Everything came from inside out. And in that respect, it's also like the theatre.
Isn't that amazing? They're probably shocked to hear that this all started with a James Bond movie. These two actors are extraordinary. And really. How did the casting process come about, and how did you come upon them here?
They just wandered in one day.
I've seen George in Captain Fantastic, which a movie I absolutely love, and he was one of the kids in that. But you know, and Dean also has been in many things, but putting them together in this kind of situation.
Well, they had, it's the usual thing, isn't it? You send them pages, you can't send them the whole script because, it's confidential and you don't want people knowing the story, and you're meeting hundreds of young actors. And they did that thing that you hope for as a director. They came in and they were the roles you'd imagine, and something more. They were better than what you'd imagine. They brought something indefinable, and then you put them together and you get that nice 2 + 2 = 5, and that even they are unaware of what they bring as a pair, but they were complementary. I wanted someone old-fashioned and internal for Schofield, perhaps a little bit more middle class, been out there longer, obviously has a family, and very dignified in a way, and a poet at some level. And then I wanted someone who was a chirpy, chatty, talkative, bit Larry. I mean, my joke about the two of them was that if they were in the pub, they would be in different parts of the pub. They wouldn't necessarily be talking to each other. Schofield would be by the fire with his book, in his glass of wine, and then his dog at his feet, and he'd be with his mates over at the bar on his third pint, making jokes about girls, And that was, and then they would, but in war, those two people become friends. It's an unlikely friendship, and they don't even know really why they love each other, but they do. And that sort of also happened. I think they can talk to this, but it happened off screen as well. That they became friends, and I was able then to have that luxury you want as a director, just watching them interact themselves and begin to see how I could take what they were giving me and feed that into the parts as well. So in a way they became almost their own authors at times, even though they were unaware of it.
Amazing. George, what was this like working in this kind of role, which I think is, I'm going to guess, probably unlike anything you've done before in movies?
Yeah, completely.
Almost unlike anything anybody's done before.
I think it's because of the process. I think it's the process of this film and being involved from such an early point but being involved with everyone. I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken from it in terms of, obviously it's a very sort of personal experience, and as Sam said, I think I feel very close to Schofield as a character, or would like to be, but there's a sort of, I don't know, I just felt close to the part, but it's what I learned most was, I think sometimes as an actor, there's this kind of fabled idea that the more in your own head you are with something, and it's kind of quite a separate experience. So even if you kind of are working on it for months beforehand, you yourself are working on it. Where with this, it was a much more three-dimensional process, and getting to understand how you were, as you always are with the storytelling, you were like a cog in a bigger machine that is the story, and just being much more aware of all the other cogs was really healthy and really beneficial, and how you can all facilitate each other and work with each other. And that's a process I've never had before. Sometimes some jobs have been intense in a more singular way. Sometimes they've been very collaborative, but therefore slightly vague. But this was just perfect.
Yeah, I mean, just the level of choreography involved in these performances and all those scenes, and everything has to be timed, like he's saying, seems extraordinary. If you're an actor and you're trying to put all that emotion and everything you do into this, really great performance that you give here. and that you give here too. I gotta say, Dean, that death scene that you have, I'm a connoisseur of death scenes in movies. And it took me back to a picture called Sometimes a Great Notion with Paul Newman and this actor named Richard Jekyll, who was slowly dying, going underwater, under a log. And I'm watching you do this, and it is flawless. It's really... I haven't seen this that much, and that scene has to be incredibly emotional to play and to get to that point where you can do this.
It was, I mean, firstly, I love that scene, especially how it's written. You know, some of the stuff that Blake says in his dying moments really are touching, even just reading the script, you know, when Blake says, am I dying? Or will you write to my mum for me? Things like that, just get you. But it was a scene that we rehearsed it once, really, in a rehearsal room, months before we actually got to shooting on that day. And I remember like the first time we actually did it, and I couldn't stop crying. And that scene was, how long was it, Sam?
About 8 minutes, something 8.5 minutes.
8 minutes
Well,
long.
The single take was 8 minutes, and he did it, I don't know, 20 times. He died 20 times. Just couldn't finish him off, you know.
No, still out. But it was, I mean, really, this whole experience making a film, you know, like with 8 minute long takes, you really do get completely lost in the scene. And especially when you're dying, you know, I genuinely believed I was dying. I genuinely believed I was in no man's land. I genuinely believed everything we did. It never, as Sam said, you know, it was lived rather than, you know, it was very lived.
You know, there was another thing with that scene, which is that he had a rig on himself. He had to bleed, obviously, during the shot, so we had to work out how to do that without cutting, without visual effects. A lot of the effects were in camera. So he had a little pump. The blood bag was in his kit, you know, his backpack, and he had a little pump that made a little sort of tiny little noise. And so when he opened his jacket, his tunic, and saw himself bleeding out, he was watching his own body pumping blood. I mean, it was quite, wasn't it? I mean, you and the look on your face, I think it's one of my favourite pieces of acting in the movie. Just the way in which you react when you see your own blood. That's the sort of thing that, you know, it took us weeks to work out how to do it. We tested different rigs and constructed things, but when you get it right, it allows the actor an incredible freedom. You know, because they're just pumping blood the whole time. The feeling that there's more and more and more and more coming into your own hands, soaking your clothes, soaking your trousers, that's real. And at the end of every take, obviously you have to go off, he has to shower, you know, change his clothes and be back in an hour or 45 minutes. But that sort of thing, and then each time the adrenaline starts surging again, he's got to do it again, he's got to, you know, it's all going to happen, it's going to happen for real. So that's the way in which it can change the way an actor can actually create something on screen. Film generally is very fragmented, it's very broken up, and it's very inorganic. You know, nothing ever flows in the way that, when you see it, it flows, you know. I mean, the ultimate of that is any action scene in a normal movie. It is incredibly tedious to shoot, and then thrilling, hopefully, to watch, right? But most acting is, you know, it's just very, you know, you have, for example, Andrew Scott's scene in this movie. So he plays Lieutenant Leslie, the guy we meet early on who says they're idiots for going over into no man's land. Otherwise known as the sexy priest from Fleabag.
Yeah, my wife loves this.
Sexy priest. she's not alone. Anyway, so we all love him too. But you know, he did I don't know 56 takes of this scene, right? And you know, at least 20 of them are like, oh, the lighter broke, or his cigarette wouldn't light, or someone missed a line, or he couldn't get his flare gun into his pocket, or you know, whatever, that sort of stuff. And it was a heavy day, right? And maybe take 52 was the one that you see. By that time, he himself, it was almost second nature. But had we done that in a conventional way, in a conventional movie way, splitting it up into setups, he's moving from an interior to an exterior, there would have been many setups. We've probably been shooting for 2.5 to 3 days, just that one scene. And we did it in a day. Now, it was intense, and it was an extreme, you know, 7-8 minutes seconds, whatever it was. But actually, in many cases, it was shorter, but it needs you to prep it a lot beforehand. So we were rehearsing all those trench scenes and all those interiors on stages at Shepperton, and we constructed all the trenches out of piles of cardboard boxes, so that I could move the walls to make them exactly the right size before the design department started to construct it. So I had to have Andrew Scott and the board do that scene and work out, how big where the bed was, how wide the door was, and Roger could come in and we could shoot it with a silly little camera and work out what the moves were. And we could also cut into the trench sides the space for the camera operator to move, because there were 3 performers going the whole time, the 2 that you see and the 1 that you don't see. And that route also had to be very specifically planned. But the challenge of the movie was always the precision of the camera with the freedom and the spontaneity of performance. You don't want performances to become robotic and repetitive in the wrong way, but you do want the camera to be absolutely doing exactly inch for inch, exactly what you want. So that weird combination was always a balance that we were trying to.
That's why I'm going to get some questions from the audience, but it's an extraordinary, I could go on forever asking these questions, but it's an extraordinary cinematic thing. We were in an event today where they showed a scene from the film, and I'm watching it with the plane coming in. And when the plane goes down, I'm going like, okay, this time it's not coming back. Movies can do that. And you watch that again, and I had the same feeling. I've seen it before. I've seen it in clips. I've seen it in the movie. And every time it gets me. It's just extraordinary what you guys have done with this film. So, let's see what you thought of it. Yes, sir, right there.
So thank you so much for making this movie. It's one of my favorite of the years, by far. It is genius. So my question is, George, you went through so many of the finest British actors through this film. It was like these landmarks. You had Colin Firth, Andrew Scott, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Mark Strong. Did you learn anything from them as you went to these different landmarks? I feel like they must have bestowed something. It was so amazing.
It's actually it's an interesting question, because you do have an incredible supporting cast that probably came in for a couple of days, to do a scene or 2, and then we're gone. And these guys are carrying the entire film. But what did you learn from working with this great cast?
Yeah, it was a real privilege. Yes, as you say, they're like English milestones. But it was. I think the thing that they're all very different in their way, but the unifying thing that I felt with all of them is the specificity of all of their work, and it kind of, they'll come at it in different ways, but it's the detail with which they approach and perform a scene, and sometimes it's unconscious, but for some it's the way that you can pull out a word or a syllable and you can kind of juice the language, because some of them all of them have done theatre and done such great work in theatre, and the way that they can use language to kind of get their points across, as well as just interrogating the complexities of the scene. As Sam was always keen to have what could be archetypal figures of these officers, often the bad upper class mindless blokes sending these poor kind of everyman over the top. It wasn't a case. Everyone is trying to do the best with the information and the experience that they have, and so to meet them and these actors crafting their characters and the experience that they've decided that those men have had, and the information that they've decided that they know, it was really amazing to see kind of how they interrogated that and to pull apart, and without it ever being vague as well, but to kind of offer up everything and being so skilled at nailing all of those complexities that they've found within it. So I think the specificity in their work and the detail.
Yes, way up there. Yeah, that's you. Hi.
Hi. How in the world did you edit this movie? I know there's a ton of takes
What
in
editing?
here.
How did he edit? He didn't edit it. It's a guy named Lee Smith, who's an incredible editor, Dunkirk and many other things. And talk about the editing here, because people don't think it's edited.
Yeah, it's it depends what you mean by edited. This is the thing. But yeah, in technical terms, it's several long takes strung together. There are points where one shot is blended with another. Sometimes it's a stitch, sometimes it's a blend, sometimes it's a morph, sometimes it's literally a simple foreground wipe. Someone walks across the frame, and on one side is the A side of the shot, the one take, and on the other side of the wipe is another take. And then as they as the person crosses frame, it's just like a wipe. So sometimes it's very, very simple and it's really straightforward. And other times, even filmmakers who, who are friends of mine, are like, how the fuck? What, plane crash, for example. I mean, people who, what point does it become real? I'm not going to tell you. But I will reveal here, actually, there's a slight of hand, really. It's partly, it's a visual effect. So it's a CG plane until a certain point, and then it's taken over by a practical rig. So we blend between CG and a practical rig. The practical plane crashes through a barn, run on a track, and I learned that trick from Skyfall. We ran the tube crash in Skyfall, which is a practical effect. But as George stands up in the foreground, as they both run to the plane, Dean goes the other side of George, and George forms the foreground wipe. So you just duck round behind, and as we come out the other side, we're with a real plane, the real flames, and what have you. So I didn't expect you to understand it entirely, but the thing about an editor is there's a great David Mamet line about editing. He says in the editing room, the director is serving two masters, the movie and himself. It's the editor's job to just serve the movie. And for me, the editor is the conscience of the film. He's the person who sits there and has the balls to tell the director, you know what, that's boring, or that doesn't work, or that doesn't make sense to me, or I think that takes better than that take. And in this case, Lee, who, as Pete said, who's just won the Oscar for Dunkirk, all Chris Nolan's movies, brilliantly edited by Lee, he's a superb editor, and it was almost comic that I was asking him to take this movie on with no obvious cut. But every day he was analysing what we shot, and we were having to make the decision what take we would use on that day. So he was telling me, look, I know director's instinct is if you've done, let's say, 28 takes, you almost always go for take 28, 27, or 26, basically, as long as they're not problematic. But he didn't want to know, he never wants to know what my favourite takes are. And he would often say to me, look, I know you like take 27, look at take 12. George fluffs a little line there, but we can deal with that. I think that's the best take, and this is why. And he was almost always right. So he was stopping me from always going to the obvious solutions. He was putting music on, he was putting sound together, he was stitching it together and feeding it back to me straight away. So I could begin to judge whether I could take the time I needed to take for the next section of the film. Because this movie was emerging out of the mist very, very quickly. And so, for example, a scene like the scene where George comes up the slope into the singing soldier, the soldiers are all in the woods towards the end there, that takes a long time. And I wanted it to take a long time, but I needed, in a way, it's much more difficult to summon up the courage to do a scene like that in a movie like this than it is a big action sequence or big explosions, because it needed to take its time. And I had the courage to do it at that tempo because I'd seen the movie up to that point. Everything was stitched together. We shot mostly in sequence.
You had to do the editing essentially while you were making the movie.
Yeah.
You couldn't do it in post like normal.
There was no way out. There was no way out. And if it was, we had to get it right on the day.
It's amazing. Okay, right here, sure.
Mr. Mendes, a quick question. Really like the picture. Can you talk a little bit about your writing process for the first half of it? Was it always a conscious choice to have it deserted? Because that's my favorite part of it. It's not being a big barrage of bullets and things, but being really super quiet on the front.
Are you talking about the very beginning? So it's a question about the writing of the picture. Are you talking about the very beginning of the picture?
Yeah. And he also has a copy of Film Comment on his lap, so it means he's really super smart about movies.
Or it could be that he writes a film comment. The music of the movie was very clear to me. I felt like it needed to come full circle. It starts with Schofield leaning against the tree, it ends with him leaning against the tree. It starts with an image of kind of bucolic, landscape, peace, bird song, and it ends with that similar landscape. And I felt like, there's one way of expressing what's happened on a journey is to take a figure at the beginning and a figure at the end in almost identical pose, and it makes you contrast everything that's happened to them in that very short space of time. So I felt that as a shape was a very beautiful shape, and shape is the thing that I kept returning to, that feeling of a piece of music, to be absolutely crude about it. I didn't want, a slow piece that's followed by a faster piece. The movie needed to breathe in and breathe out and have its own rhythm. But also I was very struck when you research this, first of all, it's very, very compressed. The field of conflict is very, very narrow. Millions of people lost their lives in one strip of land, which was no man's land. In some cases, like the Somme, I think it's 900,000 people in a day. Unimaginable. And yet, even though it was a war, it was the beginning of industrial warfare, it was the beginning of the first war with tanks, the first war with machine guns. It was also there was no commensurate development in communication. In other words, you could shoot a man at 1,000 yards with a machine gun, but you couldn't speak to a man 20 yards away because there was no way of communicating. So it's a sort of perfect storm of horror in a way. And what I was very struck by when you read the first-person accounts on which most of the screenplay was based was the degree to which people did not know what was happening 200 yards away. 200 yards is as good as 200 miles in the First World War. They just didn't know. You couldn't get any messages. And this is a movie about someone carrying a message into the unknown. Therefore, you can't know what's around the next corner. The movie depends on it. It's almost almost a horror movie trope. You know that you don't want to go around that next corner. You're terrified what you're going to find, but you know you have to. So that tension is constantly there. But we did a lot of, our prep was we had a lot of photographs in the first wall, original photographs, and one of the ones that Roger Deakins and I were most obsessed with was there were three lads that were sitting around a picnic rug. They were having lunch, and about 30 yards away was a small pile of bodies. And it wasn't that they were being disrespectful, it was just normal for them. The sense in which they sat next to the dead, they lived hand in hand with the dead, and that those people were very close. I was very struck by the fact that people were having baths and eating, in fields with cornflowers in the spring of 1917, and 200 yards away were piles of unburied men, piles of them, none of whom found graves. And so that I suppose was what I was trying to find a way to express. Everyone had a similar experience. I mean, Dean discovered he had a relative in the war. You should say about your background, because it's really interesting.
Yeah, I read a book, The Western Front Diaries, which is snippets of diary entries of the soldiers who fought in the war. And as Sam said, I found out that my great-great-grandfather, David Henry Pearce, had a diary entry in that book. And he talks about how he fought in the cavalry. He was shot when he was out in no man's land one day and was instantly paralysed and was basically bleeding out for 4 days trying to survive in no man's land. Long story short, he survived the war and he worked in the first poppy factory that opened in Richmond in London until he died. I probably wouldn't have found that out unless I had the opportunity to ask and look into the First World War. So I'm very thankful that I did.
So it's amazing. It's a remarkable film. Today, Roger Deakins was nominated for the ASC's award, cinematographer, very important award. This is being nominated right and left. Thank you so much, guys, for coming out here and sharing the secrets behind 1917.
What'd you think?
Awesome.
You like it?
Yeah.
What'd you like about it?
Oh,